Hello and welcome. My name is Jo and I talk about all things astrology. Welcome to my first video where I'm going to be talking to you about the Aries full moon of 2024. Just a quick courtesy note, the only things I will be showing in this video is the actual full moon chart itself. So feel free to listen to this as if you were just listening to a podcast. If not, you're welcome to follow along and study the chart with me as I dive straight in true Aries fashion, to this full moon in Aries that is occurring today on the 17th of October, 2024 at 10:27 p.m. That's Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. Here is the chart that I have made with a 0-degree Aries rising. So rising sign, setting sign, etc. won't matter where you are in the world. All of the signs, all of the planets will be in the same signs at the same degree. I just put it to an Aries rising for simplicity's sake. So at this lunation, we've certainly got one that packs a punch. Aries itself is already incredibly potent, incredibly dynamic, very action-oriented, assertive, go, 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 impulsive, fiery. What we have here at this lunation on top of that is a conjunction to the dwarf planet known as Eris. First of all, before I dive into the aspects here, we're at 24 degrees 35 minutes of the sign Aries. And opposing that, of course, as we do at every full moon, we have the sun at 24 degrees 35 of Libra. The sun is always opposite the moon during the full moon, illuminating the full moon. And we have an illumination oftentimes at this peak of the lunar cycle. They're very heightened energies at the full moon. It's a huge culmination and release point. It's always the top of the mountain before we come down the other side during the lunar cycle. So the new moons are very quiet, very deep, dark, and sometimes intense. But when we get to the full moon, it's when all of the energies that have been building up in the past 2 weeks since the new moon is reaching their peak, their highest point. In the sign of Aries, this is a very, very high energy, high, fast-paced sign. And Eris here, sitting on this full moon, is really, really what is packing the punch this time. Eris in mythology was the goddess of discord and strife. She is representative of chaos and the primal subconscious forms of chaos and how it can throw us off balance. Opposite the sun in Libra here, Libra is all about balance. The sun has been cruising through Libra during this Libra season, and it's reached this point in the lunar cycle where Eris and the moon in Aries opposing the sun is really giving us a challenge, but most of all, more than a challenge, it can really be illuminating or showing to us any imbalance, any stark imbalance, strife, discord that is already existing in our life. And with Aries, we're not going to get away with it. It is what it is. Aries doesn't soften its words, soften the blow. If you've been trying to ignore something or sweep something under the carpet to keep the peace or keep the harmony, as a lot of people with strong Libra in their charts tend to do, and that's kind of what Libra season is all about. It's about being sociable, keeping in balance, keeping everybody together, going with the flow. Aries is really saying now, with this moon and Eris, you have to put yourself first. That's the biggest thing that is coming across through this chart to me. There is a lot more going on, but first and foremost, it is about what has become so out of balance that you have put yourself into chaos, yourself into discord, either within your inner world, within your relationships, because something has been bubbling below the surface. And at this peak of the lunar cycle, it's really coming out. The ruler of this lunation is Mars. Mars rules Aries. Mars is traveling through the sign of Cancer. He is in his shadow zone already. He will be going retrograde through Cancer and won't be leaving Cancer until next year. Mars in Cancer is very much about these primal, instinctive, oftentimes unconscious emotions that are really being triggered or activated. Mars triggers, Mars activates. Mars is that primal force that really just wants to go, to start, to do. And emotional reactivity can be a huge theme that we're going through at the moment, and particularly when Mars does go retrograde. And having Mars in the sign of Cancer ruling this lunation, it's very interesting because we are in what is known astrologically as mutual reception, which just means that we have two planets that are in each other's signs. So Mars rules Aries, the moon rules Cancer. Mars is in Cancer, the moon sign, the moon is in Aries, Mars's sign. So even though these 2 points, Mars and the moon, are actually in a hard aspect called a square, more on that later because we actually have a grand square. Even though these 2 points are actually in a hard aspect, which is a challenge, tension, they are in each other's signs. And it's almost like the like a student exchange program. One student is staying at the other's house, the other student is staying in that student's house. So they're in each other's shoes, they're in each other's worlds. And because they have that connection, it makes this square aspect not easy because it's a difficult aspect, but there is almost a sense of disagreeing, even though you're kind of on the same page. So Mars in Cancer is triggering these subconscious emotions. We could be emotionally reactive. People could be more overly emotional or overly sensitive. It brings up anger. Or simply, you could be just feeling very strong emotions, very passionate. The moon in Aries is really at this point in the lunar cycle. The moon is really enforcing that centering in self is where you have to start. When you start getting emotional, when you're emotional or angry or you're reacting or you're triggered, it's very important to stay strong in yourself, because oftentimes when we are emotional, it's reacting to something outside of us, external of us. The moon in Aries is reminding us to stay strong in our own personal authenticity, our I am presence. And it's okay to feel those emotions. It's not wrong. It's not bad. We're emotional beings. And the moon, because the moon is all about how we feel safe and how we feel nurtured. It's okay to be passionate. It's okay to be emotional. Eris sitting here can make things very wild and rocky and impetuous. And it's about moderating that in a healthy way, not by shutting our emotions down, as I will go into more when I talk about the grand square going on here. It's not about shutting our emotions down. It's about learning to be emotional in a healthy way. And it starts with you knowing self. Aries is the self, the I am presence. Knowing yourself first and knowing where these emotions come from. Because in Cancer, it is about our memories and our history and all of our subconscious patterning from childhood. And knowing and learning about these things is really going to be a huge theme in the upcoming months. And the full moon in Aries here is really, I feel like it's to use the P word, the portal into what this Mars retrograde could be really throwing us into. And it's first and foremost just so important to come back to self. Come back to self. Don't react, respond. There's a huge difference if you want me to get all psychological with it. The other thing that is very strong at this lunation, keeping with the Aries theme for this moment, is that Chiron is at 21 degrees of Aries. Chiron is retrograde next to this full moon. So Chiron is stereotypically known as the wounded healer. He was a centaur in Greek mythology. He was a teacher. He was a huge influence on all of the old Greek heroes. He taught Hercules and Achilles. They all learned from him. He was a healer, a musician. He had all of the knowledge. He had a mortal wound, and he was in agony for all of his days because he was immortal and he could not die. So he could heal everyone, but he could not heal himself. But he used that wounding to gain knowledge and experience to be able to share with others. And it's all about bridging our wounds, not necessarily getting over, quote unquote, getting over our wounding, but it's about incorporating that experience into our everyday life in a healthy way and realizing how much that has made us grow as a person. And it can be actually very easy to slip into toxic positivity in glossing over how hard and difficult and painful and traumatic your life or people's lives are by saying this is all a journey, this is all a growth journey. It's really important to recognize and accept that sometimes things aren't okay or they won't be okay. And that is part of who you are as a person. And you can move forward with that. It's like the wound that it might heal over, but you'll always have a scar. And there is just such wisdom and experience in that. And in Aries, Chiron is about the wounded sense of self, the wounded sense of place in the world, the wounded sense of I don't know who I am. I have had such knocks to my ego, knocks to my passion that I don't feel like I can make it being myself, or I have to pretend to be something that I'm not. There can be huge collective wounding over that because we are so conditioned to be a certain way. Take what resonates for you. This might not resonate, it might resonate, but the point is that whatever pain or history of trauma that you have to your sense of self, the full moon here is really asking you to, with this Mars in Cancer square, asking you to look at how you're being emotionally triggered right now and dive deeper into the history, dive deeper into the patterns. And it's all about understanding your emotions. Chiron was a teacher, and it's about understanding. And here it's the moon, and with Mars in Cancer, it is your emotions and where they come from and where they stem from. We have the sun in Libra, lovely Libra, on the same degree as Juno, asteroid Juno. So there's a lot going on in this full moon. We've got the sun on the same degree as Juno, opposing the moon on the same degree as Eris and Chiron. So we've got these Aries planets and we've got these Libra planets. They're all talking at each other. It's a seesaw. It's one way, it's the other way. It's the fiery moon in Aries that wants to go. It's the peacemaking, diplomatic sun in Libra that just wants to make sure that everybody's okay and in harmony. And because both points of this axis are so loaded, it can be like the seesaw is swinging so wildly, you don't know where to place which foot. And this stresses the Libra parts of ourselves out because Libra does not function well if Libra feels unbalanced. Okay. Juno next to the sun is really highlighting our agreements, contracts and relationships, to use the very stereotypical Juno words. I have a very different take on Juno than general astrologers do, but she does certainly highlight themes of relationship and commitments, partnerships, especially in the sign of Libra, which is the sign of relating. Relationships in conflict with, or in contrast with, or in tension with sense of self could be a huge theme at this lunation, but also in general moving forward as well, especially with this Mars in Cancer making everything just so much more emotional. The storm could settle, the waves could settle, and we'll look back and we'll think about this period of time and go, oh my goodness, wasn't it just a wild ride? Everyone was just so emotional. Why? But it's hard. It's hard when we're feeling these really reactive, instinctive emotions that just rear up and are triggered without us even knowing that they were there. And this is shocking to Libra, because Libra has a bad reputation of being superficial, but it's not that Librans are superficial. They feel very, very deeply, but they don't want the deep, dark, unpleasant things to show or even to be felt. And so when these things are coming up, when these fiery passions, these deep, intense emotions are coming up, a lot of the time, this Sun in Libra and this Juno in Libra, they don't quite know how to handle it. And this is, I feel, the strongest stress point in this lunation chart, because we've got a lot going on the cardinal axis, especially with Pluto, that I'll talk about in a second, making this a grand cross configuration at this new moon. The stress can be on a sense of balance whilst retaining a strong sense of self. Relationships could go through a roller coaster ride at this point, but it's very much more the relationship to yourself and the relationship that you have with your own sovereignty. Juno was the queen of the gods. She was treated incredibly badly by her husband, and she was written about by men in a very, very derogatory way as the wild, vengeful, overly emotional wife. And I won't go into it here. I will make another article and video about my take on Juno, but it can very much be how we've been vilified or demonized or even put down for having these emotional triggers that are simply reactions in our own defense. And it can be very, very toxic in Libra, trying to keep the peace, trying to keep our relationships going, trying to stay, even just to stay in a sense of harmony. It can be very difficult when we have all of these underlying very intense emotions that are telling us something's not right, this isn't good. And then the pressure of society, because Libra needs to keep that very, very not proper, for want of a better word, just a proper balanced face to society. And society is saying you can't be overly emotional because that's just not done, or that's not decent, that's impolite, whatever it may be. Juno conjunct the Sun, opposing the full moon conjunct both our wound and our healing with Chiron, and the utter chaos and discord of Eris. We're being shown what has been toxic about how we relate to others. We're being shown what has been toxic in our relation to our sovereignty and owning our boundaries, owning our rights, and owning what we feel. And if you're not used to embodying that, it can be terrifying stepping into that. It can be very terrifying stepping into power like that. Pluto which is making the fourth corner of this grand square. Pluto is about power. Pluto is opposing Mars. It makes the figure of a cross as it crosses over this sun opposing the moon. So all of these planets are in square to each other. We have two oppositions. It's like somebody's pulling both of your arms and both of your legs and you don't know which direction to go. The way that I like to think of the grand square, also known as a grand cross, is if somebody's pulling your feet and your hands in a different direction, what's in the center? The center is going to be your heart space. If you look in the middle of this circle, that's where all of these points cross. It's about sitting in the middle, very Libran, sitting in the middle and looking at all facets, but it's coming back to self. It's very Aries. Coming back to self, coming into stillness, because that is the only way that you will find direction. Direction can be a strong theme when we do have this grand cross configuration, particularly because it's a cardinal, which is one of the qualities of the astrological signs. We've got cardinal, fixed, and mutable. The cardinal signs initiate. They begin the season. Direction is very, very, that's what is speaking to me right now, is very, very strong at this time. Aries is very direct. Aries knows where it wants to go. Libra doesn't. Libra just wants to stay in the middle. Libra doesn't want to say yes or no. It just wants to say whatever you want, dear. Direction is very important in this lunation, and Aries wants to show us the way. The only way we're going to move forward, the only way we're going to forge a clear path authentically to ourselves is by, at this point, but what I'm getting is just not moving at all. You have to sit in the center of this cross, because if someone's pulling your arms and your feet in all four directions, you're not going anywhere. You have to come into center, into self, into heart, to be able to know the direction to take. Pluto, back to Pluto, is at the final degree of Capricorn. It has been ongoing for the last 18 months, 2 years, finishing up its journey in Capricorn that none of us are going to be experiencing for the rest of our lifetimes. And it's about the structures in our life that must end, change, die, be destroyed, whichever word resonates with you most and doesn't freak you out the most, because Pluto can be a lot. It's the structures in our life that must end, because we have to make new boundaries, new structures for our own empowerment. This is the last hurrah of Pluto, making sure we have those healthy boundaries, we have those healthy structures that empower us. It's very much about dismantling hierarchical structures, systems. This is all bigger picture things, because Pluto is an outer planet. It's very much about corporations, governments, the structures of society that are very imbalanced and toxic. But on a personal level, we all have structures and systems within our own lives in the way that we operate. And Pluto's pointing out where we're disempowered within those structures. It could be even our ambitions, our career, and something to do with parenting, something that is disempowering us that we must release, let go of, and allow to be destroyed, ended, because that is the only way for the ground to become fertile, to build new structures. This is playing into this lunation really strongly, because Pluto is the furthermost, the outermost planet in this configuration. He has the most power here. Pluto generally has the last say on anything. It's very unfair, but it's true. And everything that this fiery, passionate Eris Moon Chiron conjunction is wanting to do, go, be, that is tied in with these emotional reactions, these instincts, this childhood trauma, even history with this Mars in Cancer here, really in tension with the Juno Sun conjunction that's trying to just remain in balance and keep sovereignty. These three themes are all tied into the way that Pluto inevitably will be empowering us. And it's huge. It's a huge structural shift, and transformation that society, the world, has been going through with Pluto in Capricorn. But it's collective and it's societal, and it's the world out there. But the world is made up of us. It's made up of people. So it does still always come down to a personal level. We are all experiencing this in our own way. And the huge thing that I do get from this chart, besides direction, besides being able to remain centered in self to get direction, is that whatever culmination or emotional release we're going through right now, it ultimately will be empowering. And it could be chaotic, it could be overly emotional, it could feel wild right now. You could not be feeling all of these things depending on where this lunation sits in your chart, but you will still, mark my words, be noticing the people around you behaving wildly or erratically or overly emotionally. The big thing here is that Juno's just really speaking to me and saying that the collective is remembering its power. The collective is remembering how to remain sovereign to self and to remain in balanced or in right relationship to others, the world. And society as a whole will be confronted with issues about disempowerment, but I'm also very strongly feeling about issues of the disempowerment, particularly of women historically and now. Juno as the Queen of Heaven, Eris is the goddess of discord, who changed the course of history by instigating the Trojan War in myth because she was left out. It's about women being remembered, women being empowered and acknowledged. And this isn't just about women, it's about the yin, feminine, whichever word vibes with you the most, parts of ourselves, including men. Men have a yin and a yang in them as well. The yin part of yourself, and loving, accepting, and acknowledging that it is healthy to express and feel that, because we're not conditioned to believe that it is healthy. Mars is teaching us to feel our emotions. He's activating it. We've got no choice. We've got to look at it. And in opposition to Pluto, it's about the empowerment that we gain through acknowledging and exploring those emotions. And what is unhealthy and what is toxic must end. Thank you for listening to this video of the Aries full moon. I hope you found it interesting. Please, if you did like it, comment below. Let me know what you think. And I look forward to coming back and speaking to you at another point about another astrological topic. Enjoy this full moon. Stay centered in self. Stay empowered. Feel your emotions. Don't let your emotions overfeel you. Over and out. Have a good one.